Steve Finn, a marine researcher, was standing on the rocky sands of Semon Island in Florida in 2010 under the chilling Atlantic sun, looking out at the great expanse of the islands. He had traveled to this far-off, unexplored region of the planet, away from the busy labs and classrooms where he typically performed his studies. Steve's insatiable thirst for knowledge catapulted him to the top of marine biology. His most recent voyage looked to be his most ambitious yet. He had devoted his life to understanding the ocean's mysteries. He aimed to investigate an extraordinary and enigmatic shark species that had baffled experts for many years. The Semon Islands provided the ideal setting for Steve's investigation. The environment here was unique to anywhere else in the globe, and the waterways were alive with life. He could perform his groundbreaking research because of the secluded location's protection from the scientific community's prying eyes. Steve felt somewhat alone as he set up his temporary study station on the beautiful seashore. He was cut off from the outer world and had to travel for days by boat to reach the closest human community. He appreciated the isolation, though. As Steve methodically recorded the routines and behaviors of the elusive sharks, days grew into weeks. He was in awe of their strength and grace as they sailed across the glistening waves. However, something strange about these creatures made them different from previous species he had encountered. Steve's adventure took a chilly turn on a pleasant evening, when the sun fell below the horizon and painted the sky in hues of orange and pink. After hearing tales from nearby fishermen about a shark that defied all accepted classifications, he decided to travel further into the island's center. Steve was uneasy as he navigated his kayak across the island's maze-like waterways. The environment was awful because of the silence. Other than the seagulls briefly appearing, there was no sound. The sea appeared to close in on him as the scorching sun above it reflected glistening light off the water's surface. It seemed as though the surroundings were working together to conceal their secrets. Steve's search turned up nothing for hours. He considered that the elusive shark might simply be a myth, which frustrated him. Before returning to his study station, he decided to try again. Subsequently, as dusk fell, he noticed a dark figure sliding beneath the water. The recognizable shape of a shark caught his attention, but this shark was unlike any he had ever seen before, which caused his heart to race. With sharp fins and a mottled, dark gray skin that appeared to fit perfectly with the darkness, it was more enormous and terrifying. The shark circled his boat when it caught his attention, its intelligence-filled eyes fixed on him. He was aware that he had made a remarkable discovery that had the potential to alter the path of his professional life. Steve started to observe the shark's behavior as his hands shook, meticulously noting its motions and interactions with the surroundings. But a mounting sense of dread tore at him as he toiled. This shark was not only exceptional, it was also extraordinary. Unannouncedly, the shark pounced on the kayak, its mighty jaws slamming shut on Steve's thigh. The waters echoed with a horrifying cry. Steve screamed inexplicably because the pain was unbearable. Panic raced through him as he paddled frantically to escape the shark. However, the shark persisted, circling and charging with an unfathomable level of aggression. Steve never stopped battling the ruthless predator for his life. He was lucky that nothing wrong happened to his kayak and didn't sink. He struggled against an immeasurable power of nature in the pitch blackness of the Semon Islands. He was being put through physical and mental strain in a struggle that seemed to have no end. Steve's thoughts drifted to the study he had devoted his life to as fatigue threatened to overcome him. He had to reveal what this shark was. Even as the predator's jaws repeatedly closed in on him, he persisted in recording its actions with a burst of determination. As the shark resumed its unrelenting attack in those terrifying seconds, Steve Finn's search for knowledge became a frantic struggle for survival. The secluded and unexplored waters had exposed the Semon Islands' darkest secret, and Steve was determined to discover it at any cost. His leg felt numb to the touch. The blood was dripping, and he had nothing to do except wait for the shark to escape. The shark finally gave in and sank into the ocean's depths as the first rays of dawn appeared over the horizon. Steve survived but was battered and bruised, and his kayak was somewhat damaged. Even though he was hurt, he was aware that what he had seen was terrific and would have a lasting impact on his career. This sensation overshadows the pain. When he arrived on the island, he called the rescue helpline for the coastal guards and explained his dilemma. They arrived within an hour. He was taken off the island and brought to the hospital, where he underwent several operations. As he returned to his research lab, Steve was carrying news about a predator that defied every scientific theory. The Semon Islands had divulged his knowledge, but not without cost. Steve Finn had caught a glimpse of the actual danger of the untamed world under the waters. The ocean's depths held mysteries that could never be fully understood. It was the middle of the summer of 2012. David Smith and his close friend Henry Brown embarked on a remarkable journey deep within the Amazon River, where the dense vegetation appeared to encircle them. A region where myths and tales have long been entwined with the natural beauties of the river. They aimed to capture the hidden world of aquatic life in the enormous Amazon River. David and Henry were experienced explorers who shared a desire to learn more about the secrets of the Amazon River. They had spent years navigating the Amazon's complex waters, but this trip promised to be unique. They were frightened by the gloomy atmosphere created by the lush emerald canopy overhead, which cast a shadow over the river. The atmosphere was ominous and heavy. The voices of distant animals occasionally pierced through this eerie silence. Their tiny exploration boat sliced through the choppy waters with unwavering accuracy. David and Henry delved deeper into the Amazon's aquatic world while armed with cameras, diving gear, and their insatiable curiosity. A realm unto itself, the Amazon River was teeming with visible and invisible life. David and Henry were unfazed despite the oppressively hot days and the oppressively moist air. The cacophony of unseen creatures echoing through the thick rainforest on their sides filled their senses, bringing the noises of the jungle to life. The water's surface mimicked the rich vegetation as they traveled further, hiding the surprises beneath. Their initial interactions with the river's inhabitants were fascinating. In a rainbow of hues, exotic fish dashed across the shallows of the crystal-clear water. Giant caimans were hiding in the darkness with eyes like gleaming rubies. They became increasingly uneasy as they moved farther into the maze-like waters. The villagers mentioned the mythology of a massive river-dwelling predator that was talked about in whispers around campfires. They referred to it as El Devorador, the Devourer, a being that was supposedly as old as the water itself. Although David and Henry had rejected these stories as folklore, they were nevertheless worried about something. They had come looking for the remarkable, and it appeared that the Amazon would not disappoint. A bone-chilling boom that resonated through the dense rainforest broke the calm of the forest one hot afternoon as their boat traversed a tiny river. Henry and David stared at one another with wide eyes as their hearts raced. They had a gut feeling that something enormous and powerful was around. The waterway opened and revealed a significant serene lagoon as they turned a curve in the river. It was a tranquil oasis on the side of the river with mysteriously dark waters. The lagoon's surface was covered with long, eerie shadows from the surrounding tall trees. And then, they saw it. A gigantic bull shark appeared to be emerging from the lagoon's depths. Its sleek, threatening body moved with an elegance belying its size. Its icy, unblinking eyes were riveted on the visitors to its territory. It was El Devorador, in the local language, the creature of legend, and it was real. David and Henry watched in stunned silence as the epic predator circled their boat. Its scales gleamed like obsidian in the dappled sunlight, and its mouth revealed rows of razor-sharp teeth. This was the species that had ruled these waters for untold centuries. The shark's intent was obvious. It perceived David and Henry as trespassers who had entered its historic domain, intrusions into its territory. The shark attacked the boat with an explosion of unfathomable force. The ship heaved and groaned under the power of its enormous jaws, snapping shut as they did so. David and Henry were knocked to the deck, sending their cameras and other equipment into the sea. David saw Henry floundering in the water during the subsequent turmoil. Henry was in the shark's grasp after the ship's defenses were breached. David grimly realized that they were engaged in a life-or-death struggle. David was aware of their clear disadvantage because the shark's attack had damaged the ship significantly. He reached for a flare gun in his backpack out of desperation. He fired it with shaky hands, hoping their support team would receive the signal. David battled the shark for what seemed like an eternity, the creature's continuous assault driving him to the point of weariness. He could hear Henry screaming for aid, and the fact that his friend's life was in danger weighed heavily on his mind. The sound of approaching motorboats then reached his ears just as everything appeared lost. When their backup team noticed the flare, they hurried to their rescue. As the rescue squad arrived on the scene, outboard motors filled the air. The rescuers drove the shark away from the vessel using harpoons and underwater explosives. The creature unwillingly withdrew to the lagoon's depths after sensing that its chances were no longer favorable, according to its instincts from long ago. As the rescue crew removed David from the wrecked ship, he was filled with fear. Henry was nowhere to be seen, and he was devastated to learn that the shark killed his friend. David was taken from the Amazonian domain to the city in the following days, his body beaten and his spirit crushed. His recollection of El Devorador was forever altered, serving as a chilling reminder of the harshness of the river. Henry's death haunted David's dreams, and losing his friend weighed heavily on his conscience. He couldn't help but wonder if their insatiable curiosity had led them to a fate sealed long before they had ever set foot in the waters. The memory of the Amazon's hidden predator, a being that had surfaced from mythology to claim one of their own, tormented David as he returned to the city. David understood that the memories of that momentous encounter would follow him for the rest of his days, since the rainforest had disclosed its darkest secrets. In the heart of Antarctica, where the biting cold and icy winds dominated the landscape, Alexander Clark and his dedicated team of researchers had become intimately acquainted with the harsh realities of this frozen wilderness. Their mission was to document the lives of apex predators in these extreme conditions, and they were determined to push the boundaries of their understanding. The team prepared for a new dive into the chilly Southern Ocean's depths on one especially Arctic morning. There was a tangible sense of expectancy in the air as Alexander and his fellow researchers put on their specialist cold water equipment. The group had arrived in a desolate area of open ocean, ringed by colossal icebergs that resembled old frozen sentinels. There were dangers in their endeavor. The great white sharks who lived in these frigid waters were renowned for their fierce territoriality and grit under pressure. The team's objective was to record their feeding and hunting habits, but they knew they were entering a hostile environment where existence was a constant struggle. Although visibility was poor, the team's underwater cameras and equipment were made to endure these challenging circumstances. Looking for any indications of the apex predators they had come to observe, they combed the frozen expanse with their eyes. They painstakingly watched the underwater habitat for hours, filming seals and other marine creatures that had adapted to the severe Antarctic environment. But the real show stealers remained elusive, making their presence known but yet to be seen. Then, as the group's oxygen supplies depleted, Alexander noticed a slight hint of movement in the distance. The dark form of a giant great white shark was seen coming from the murky water. The team marveled as the enormous predator circled a pack of seals, each of which was an expert at surviving in these harsh seas. Sensing the danger, the seals gathered closer, their dark eyes wide with fright. The enormous shark's careful motions allowed its massive body to glide through the water quickly. Its dorsal fin emerged from the water in a menacing silhouette, casting a foreboding shadow across the frigid ocean floor below. When the great white shark emerged from the depths, it did so in a burst of lightning-fast movement, its enormous jaws closing with an audible power. The predator's implacable hold thwarted the seal's desperate attempts to flee, causing the water to erupt into a fury of thrashing and foamy waves. Alexander and his team watched in awe and horror as the brutal scene unfolded. The seal's struggle was futile, its life extinguished in an instant. The shark had claimed its meal, and the icy waters of Antarctica bore witness to the relentless cycle of life and death. Alexander was carefully filming a lone great white shark when he suddenly felt a strong impact from below. As pain raced through his leg, he strained to keep calm as his eyesight blurred. Alexander was caught in the jaws of the shark after it had struck. Alexander struggled to break free of the predator's tenacious hold on him due to the attack's startling ferocity. Upon seeing the sudden attack, his crew reacted quickly. They frantically attempted to divert the shark by slamming their tanks and causing a ruckus under the water. The struggle for existence had intensified in the frigid depths. Alexander's world was shrunk to a never-ending battle with the enormous predator that had identified him as an intruder and a potential meal. He fought against the shark's tremendous force, using every bit of his training and willpower. Finally, the team's synchronized efforts were able to redirect the shark's attention, enabling them to rescue Alexander. But the damage had been done, and Alexander's leg still showed signs of the vicious fight. He was brought to the surface, his pain and tiredness visible as blood stained the icy waters. Alexander returned to the research vessel, where he was given prompt medical attention for his wounds. He had suffered severe injuries from the shark's strong teeth, and the chilly water had worsened them. He was being stabilized by the team's medication, who also treated his wounds and provided pain treatment. As Alexander lay in the vessel's makeshift infirmary, he couldn't help but reflect on the profound impact of their mission in Antarctica. The icy expanse had tested their courage and resilience, pushing them to the limits of human endurance. Days moved into hours as Alexander recovered from his wounds, but his tenacity remained unwavering. The team continued its investigation, recording the apex predators in these frigid waters. The great white sharks continued to be elusive and fearsome, demonstrating the tenacious nature of the Antarctic environment. There was a great deal of respect between Alexander and his colleagues as they prepared to leave the icy continent of Antarctica. They departed with amazement and humility, aware that the cold realm's untamed beauty and harshness would live on in their memories forever. It was a scorching day in June 1989 when a narrative of dread and survival came to pass. Albert Miller stood at the boat's edge, looking down into the black abyss below amid the soft sway of palm trees beneath the night Caribbean sky. Albert was familiar with the secrets of the sea. He had traveled through innumerable underwater landscapes as a seasoned diver and marine archaeologist, but tonight's adventure carried a unique attraction. Albert was keen to find the shipwreck's secrets because it was reputed to contain historical artifacts. The group of 5 divers dived one at a time, their torches piercing the night and illuminating the way to the missing ship. They were engulfed in a universe where time had stopped, as the black abyss took them completely. The divers were suspended in the water, and as they approached the shipwreck, they moved with an unsettling grace. The old ship's silhouette started to emerge as they got closer to the wreck, its skeleton frame covered in decades' worth of coral and aquatic creatures. It was a hauntingly beautiful sight, a tribute to the unstoppable forces of nature that tried to recover all that human hands had previously touched. Albert's heart beat faster with anticipation while exploring the ship's interior and using his flashlight to make unsettling shadows on the ancient objects. Each find provided a window into the lives of persons who had once navigated these waterways and a link to the past. But a surprising threat is hidden among the artifacts of the past. The first sign of trouble came as a collective murmur among the divers, a warning whispered through the underwater communication devices. In the distance, a shadowy figure glided silently through the water. It was a shark, but not just any shark. This one was massive and powerful, a tiger shark, a formidable predator that had made the ancient shipwreck its territory. Fear rippled through the team as the shark circled, its predatory instincts aroused by the intruders in its domain. It was a scene straight out of a nightmare. The inky abyss transformed into a battleground where the divers were no longer the apex predators. The shark's menacing presence grew bolder as the divers gathered closer to the shipwreck. It darted in and out of the shadows, its powerful form gliding effortlessly through the water. Albert could feel his heart pounding as he watched the shark's every move, its dark eyes on the group. In an instant, chaos erupted. The shark surged forward, its jaws snapping shut just inches from one of the divers. Panic spread like wildfire as the team scrambled to regroup, their flashlights flickering in the turmoil. Adrenaline coursed through Albert's veins as he fought to maintain his composure. The battle for survival had begun. With their training and instincts as their only weapons, the divers tried to fend off the relentless predator. They kicked and thrashed, desperately attempting to drive the shark away. In the inky darkness, the struggle was chaotic and disorienting. Amidst the chaos, Albert felt a searing pain in his leg. The shark had struck, its razor-sharp teeth leaving a trail of blood in its wake. The pain was excruciating, but he couldn't afford to give in to panic. With every ounce of his strength, he pushed back against the relentless force of the predator. The battle continued for what felt like hours as the divers fought to defend one another as the shark circled, unfazed by their efforts. Albert saw a horrifying scene unfold in front of him. One of his teammates, viciously mauled by the shark and fighting for his life, passed away. His lifeless body was hidden in the ocean's gloom. With just the writhing and gasps for air breaking the silence, the black abyss had transformed into a terrible battleground. The divers used the communication equipment to send out a desperate distress signal amidst the turmoil of the underwater struggle with the mighty shark. One of the divers, Sarah, called for assistance, alerting their dive boat above the water to the dangerous scenario developing below. The boat's captain quickly radioed the closest Coast Guard station after realizing the severity, and giving the exact location and a detailed account of the dangerous situation. A Coast Guard rescue team was activated and headed in their direction in a matter of minutes. They drove toward the undersea combat with a sense of urgency, as they were outfitted with cutting-edge sonar gear and underwater motor vehicles. They arrived just in time to deflect the shark's attention away from the struggling divers and carry out a daring rescue operation in the Caribbean, thanks to their quick response and efficient teamwork. In the gloomy waters, their arrival was a light of hope for the rest of the divers. Together, the rescue crew and the divers created a distraction that allowed the injured divers to be rescued. Albert's legs swelled in pain as he was pulled to the surface. His relief was audible as he broke through the water's surface and gasped for air. His team member's death and the shark encounter had left a lasting mental and physical scar. Relief and appreciation mixed when Albert and the other hurt divers were welcomed on board the rescue ship. Albert couldn't help but think about the might and majesty of the ocean and its creatures as they returned to land. The shark had reminded him of the wildness of the aquatic realm, where people were merely passing through and vulnerable to the whims of nature. That evening, the ancient shipwreck would stay untouched, its mysteries hidden in the depths. However, the experience with the mighty shark would remain in Albert and the divers' memories for the rest of their lives, as a reminder of the dangers and secrets of the ocean's depths.